Hello everybody and welcome to ESL Revolution. I am your content creator and host, Dr. B. Welcome back to the channel. It has been about a week since I've done my last video for the general side of the class, and today I want to record and upload that for you today so you have some new content to check out. Well, something interesting has kind of been percolating in my mind a little bit over the last little while, and this video is actually coming out of some other research that I have been doing and thought I would pass that on to you. And this is about two terms that we often hear in Korea. Actually, we hear these two things being bantered about. I wanted to weigh in to the topic here and provide some clarity. This is especially going to be important to students who are learning their English here in Korea, but of course it can be taken as information for others who are other students who are in other countries learning English as well. There are two phrases or two acronyms that are used amongst others, ESL and EFL. And these two terms are often thought of as the same thing, maybe just with some people might use them interchangeably, but in actual fact, they are a little different, and I want to help you understand what they are and then relate how those terms fit into a Korean language classroom. So ESL, and I'm sure you probably already know this, stands for English as a Second Language. And EFL stands for English as a Foreign Language. Well, they don't sound that dissimilar, do they? Don't they mean the same thing? Well, actually they don't. While it's true that each of these classrooms, let's say this is ESL and this is EFL, while they are both learning the language, right? They're both learning English. They are doing so generally in a context that is different. Now, if we look at the ESL classroom, English as a Second Language, the technical aspects of this classroom and this way of learning would be if you, as a, let's say, as a Korean student, were living in Canada, that's where I'm from, so I'll use that as the example. You are living in Canada, you have moved over there, and you intend to stay in Canada for several years. Maybe perhaps doing language schooling while you are there. So, in order to become more adept at dealing with the surroundings, you find yourself in an ESL classroom. That classroom will provide you language tools to dealing with the day-to-day nuances of society. You are learning English as a second language because Korean would be your first language, English is your second language, or perhaps even your third. And you are living in or engaging in a population that English is the primary language. So essentially, you're getting yourself caught up to where you need to be. That is an English as a second language classroom or situation. You as a Korean student living in Canada, engaged in the local population, and you intend to stay there for some time. Maybe you're moving there permanently, who knows? Okay, so that's an ESL. Now, EFL, English as a Foreign Language, this is slightly different because in the Korean context, where I am right now and where you are right now, this is our classroom. We are not an ESL classroom. We are an EFL classroom, English as a foreign language. Now, the distinction or the difference between those two is that outside my window, it is not an English-speaking culture. So an ESL classroom is where the culture outside the classroom is English only or predominantly English. And the EFL classroom is the predominant language outside is not English. And English is primarily within the classroom setting. This is what we're doing. We are not an ESL classroom, but rather we are an English as a foreign language classroom. So, because of that, there are some things that we need to be aware of. The first thing is our textbooks. Now, having looked at a whole host of textbooks in various different settings, elementary, middle school, high school, and university, I have noticed that a lot of the topics are actually geared more toward an ESL classroom. For example, directions. In that chapter, and I've seen this in this kind of conversation or this kind of chapter in many different books, you have the idea of, I don't know where I'm going. I want to go here, but I don't know how to get there. So I'm going to ask somebody on the street, how do I get to blah, blah, blah? Well, that's all fine for practicing basic conversation. However, the problem is that as a Korean student, when you go out there, you don't need to do that, right? Because EFL is in the classroom. ESL doesn't exist outside the doors. So some of the subjects, some of the topics that are brought up in the books don't necessarily fit really well to an EFL environment. Now, with that being said, it then falls on me as your teacher to try to shape the chapter in a way that fits a better climate of EFL. So let's take the example again of directions. So instead of you asking for directions in English, let's say I'm a visitor to Korea and I'm looking to go somewhere in Seoul or in Daegu or another city. Or I need to figure out, how do I take the bus from here to here? Now, in that sense, even though we're talking about directions, as a foreigner living here, obviously English is not your primary language. So we would have to try to engage a little bit in order for me to understand. So you could provide some basic information to me, perhaps, within the context of a conversation. Now, that is more of an EFL scenario than it would be an ESL scenario. An ESL scenario would be you, as a Korean student, asking a foreigner like me in Canada about going to a particular place, and I would then give you directions. Okay, so the situation, the context of that is not the same as what we would have here in Korea. Now, so that's the first thing to keep in mind, is our textbooks may not be completely attuned to an EFL environment. That's number one. Number two, The second thing to kind of take away from this is that when you're in class, there is focused work on particular things that we need to get done. And I know as a teacher that once you step out of that classroom, that the EFL environment is over. Now, this is a reason why I'm hoping to engage the EFL classroom, let's say EFL plus, with the digital aspect of my teaching. This goes to social media, Instagram, Facebook. For example, when I do the live streams. It also takes into account the idea of the YouTube channel, which this video is being recorded right now for YouTube. So those are a way of taking the EFL classroom and taking it just a little bit further. I'm not asking you to have English conversation out in the Korean public because that doesn't make sense to that particular situation. However, engaging in these other activities will, and by that I mean the online and the social media activities, will in fact reinforce and help you within the EFL classroom that we have at our university. So these are things that we can do outside to help inside, even though we are not engaged culturally in the English language. There are little things we can do to keep ourselves going as we go through our time. Now, another thing that you can do within this EFL environment is to give yourself time, maybe once or twice a week, to engage in some entertainment via Netflix or YouTube or other platforms where you can actually watch some American dramas or comedy shows, that sort of thing. Now, how can this be helpful in an EFL classroom? Well, listening is an aspect that can really come into play when you are dealing with an EFL environment. Obviously, talking out in the culture is not necessarily going to help you because there's nobody to talk to. However, having those listening skills develop can help aid your learning in an EFL classroom and hence raise the value of the education that you are receiving. So, one of the things that I've often said is the TV show Friends. Now, this TV show goes back in the mid-90s. It is quite a bit old, but the great thing is the pronunciation of the actors is quite good and easy to understand. Also, you can get these with Korean captions, so if you're not entirely sure what to do, then what they're saying or pick up on that nuance, those captions are available to you. All right, so that's just one little thing you can do as an extra in the EFL environment to help you along further. Okay, I hope that helps. It's going to be a short video today, but that distinction I think is necessary and important for me and for you when we step into our class on March 30th, 2020. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope this has been helpful. If you have some helpful hints on learning language in Korea, pop a notice back down underneath in the comment section would be helpful. And of course, hit the notification button and the subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Everybody, be the revolution. Peace.